good morning, good afternoon, and very good evening to you. The good old people tube. Hope you're all doing everything grand on all by the world. God almighty, what happened to this face then? Anyway, yes, hello everybody. Today we are talking about loopers into the front end of amplifiers. A few people have said, you know, how do you do it so when you're looping into the front end of the amplifier, as soon as you kick, some people say when they kick on a distortion and a loop's in the front end, it just disappears into this big wash, and the loop just disappears and you just got the distortion on top. So basically what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how I do it, and hopefully kind of like, you know, the ideas, well, how I do it, you might be able to kind of like incorporate into your own kind of setup and kind of go from there really. Okay, so the looper we're going to use today is this. This is the Line 6 DL4 delay modeler, and it's basically a delay pedal, but it does have a loop function which is set to at this point in time. So that's the looper we're going to use, and I'll talk in a second about signal chain because I think that's important. But that's the looper we're going to use. That's the looper I used in the intro jam, and that was all going through the front end of the Marshall MG. There was no effects loop used. That's everything you heard was in the front end of the Marshall. Okay, to loop into a front end requires you to do certain things to your pedals volume wise, and also kind of like it will change the sound of it a bit. So the intro jam, let me talk about that quick. The intro jam, for the rhythm track, I was using the Tone City Golden Plexi, and you'll see that again in a minute. I'll show you the signal chain on my pedal board in a sec. But for the intro jam, the rhythm track, the main kind of like backing, if you will, I was using the Tone City Golden Plexi, which I have set very, very kind of like clean-ish. It's not clean, but it's got a bit of grit. It's the John Frusciante tone, basically. It's my John Frusciante kind of tone. It's what I use. So that was what I was using for the rhythm track, and I recorded that using the DL4, just straight in, just recorded it, you know, and just looped it, basically. It was just a loop. That's what we're here for, Dave. Why do you even say that? Doing. Anyway, so yeah. So the rhythm track was using the Golden Plexi, and what that does is that creates a louder, clean signal. If I didn't use the Golden Plexi, and I'll show you this in a bit, and I just used basically the MG as the rhythm, which is super, super clean, the moment I stuck a distortion on top of that, the loop would vanish. Because the signal isn't loud enough. So kind of like, I suppose kind of like my first kind of tip today is to use like a pedal like the Golden Plexi or an overdrive to boost your clean channel to make it louder, if you know what I mean. And also kind of, yeah, and also kind of give it a bit of grit, I would say, because I don't really like super, super clean. But saying that, some people do, so maybe that's not the way to go. Quiet, Dave. Anyway, but yeah, that'd be maybe another thing. That'd be kind of one thing I'd recommend is kind of using that like semi-cleanish, overdriven kind of sound, just to kind of push the loop a bit louder instead of it just being kind of like clean, like mega clean. You know, it'll just help it along a bit more and make it a bit louder for when you do kick distortion on over the top of it. It's not going to disappear so easily. So that's what I was doing for the rhythm track. Golden Plexi boosted the clean channel, and I'll show you that in a bit, and I'll show you how much it boosts it. Okay, so when it came to soloing over the top of it, once I had the loop recorded into the Line 6, my ear is ringing in that weird way. You ever get that? Like where your ear just randomly just starts ringing. Anyway, once I'd recorded the loop into the DL4, I then went and turned off the Golden Plexi and just used the Marshall Governor 2 Plus, which again you'll see in a bit, and then I kicked on the DS2 at one point and the Ibanez War at one point as well, which I'm sure you heard and saw, hopefully, in the video. I don't know if you'll be able to see the pedals, but hopefully you should be able to see them in the video. But what I did with the Governor is I turned the pedals volume down. And the Marshall Governor, when I'm looping, I normally run the Marshall Governor's volume about 9 to 10 o'clock. It's at 10 o'clock at this point in time. But it varies on the backing. Because the backing was quite loud, like the picky guitar was quite, there's quite, like, you know, quite intense, kind of, like, it was quite heavy kind of handed. I was able to turn the governor up a bit more. If I'm doing a softer backing, if the backing track was a little bit softer and I wasn't hitting the guitar so hard for the rhythm, I would probably have to have the volume about 9. So that's my other key to this, is the pedal you're using to solo over the top of the loop needs to be unity with the loop or quieter. So don't kind of like, just because you've got your overdrive set to your amp unity, kind of like, if you've got your pedal board set up, because I normally run the volume on the Marshall Governor 2 at 3 o'clock, so it's like 3/4 of the way up. That's where I normally run that. But when I'm looping through it, I have to turn it down so it doesn't drown out the loop, so to say, if you know what I mean. Here comes the problem with that, and this is what I rectify this with the DS2. When you lower the volume of a distortion pedal, like the Governor or an overdrive pedal, you lose gain, and you also lose low end as well. It thins out the sound. The lower the volume is on the pedal, the thinner the sound is, and also the kind of the low end disappears. So it does become a little bit thinner, which is kind of a good thing, because then it won't clutter the loop. It will kind of cut through the loop instead of kind of dominating it with all the low end that you normally get with like a distortion pedal or an overdrive pedal. Your tone is thinner, so it's just going to like sit on top of the loop, and especially if you turn your volume down. But there's the problem. Where do you get your sustain from if you want to do kind of like big, like sustainy guitar solos like I like to do? That's where the DS2 comes in. And because of where the DS2 is in the signal chain, the Marshall Governor is attenuating the volume. So no matter what I put on, after or before, I don't know which way around it actually supposed to go, it doesn't matter, because the master volume is being controlled by the Governor. So if the Governor's volume is about 10 o'clock, I can have the DS2 cranked to the max. So the DS2 is everything on 10 on the turbo mode, and it gives me tons of sustain and brings back a bit of warmth, but not too much, and a little bit of low end, but again not too much, because it's all been attenuated by the Marshall Governor. So that's how I do that. If I wanted to solo over clean, I would just leave the golden plexi on and everything's okay. I don't have to worry about kind of like if I'm just soloing over a looping clean, I don't have to worry about anything drowning out. But like as soon as you kick on distortion, yeah, invariably, if your distortion pedal's too loud, your loop will just disappear. Okay, so that's the second tip: is your solo pedal that you're going to use to solo over the loop you need to lower the volume so the loop has room to breathe. Basically, it needs, your loop is paramount, and if you turn the volume down on the pedal, you'll eventually find a sweet spot. But I say the only problem with that is, the pitfall with that is, you will lose gain. So you might not have as much gain, and it might be a bit cleaner than you want, and you want more. But in which case, any pedal that comes onto the right side of it, which is input side of a pedal, you can just kick on as many more gain pedals as you want. Like for instance, I just kick on the DS2, which is more than enough gain, because it's on the input side of the Governor, which I'll show you in a bit. This is getting a bit confusing. Actually, I'll tell you what, let's show you that now. It might be a good segue. So let me show you the signal chain, and we'll talk about that a bit more. So let me just recap quickly. Number one is, if you're going to create a loop, maybe use something to boost the clean channel, like like a compressor or an overdrive pedal, or just something just to kick up the loop a bit louder than just your clean amp sound. Invariably, you don't want to be using distortion to create a loop from the amp. You know what I mean? Because then your loop will just be distorted, no matter what. And that'll bring me to something else I will talk about in a bit. But so that's number one. Is if you that's what I do. I can only talk from my perspective. Use something to kind of like boost the loop so it's a bit louder and a bit fuller sounding, than just kind of like clean kind of thing. Gives you more options to kind of go over the top of it with distortions and stuff like that. Okay, so number two is turn the volume down on your solo pedal, your lead pedal. Turn that down. Okay, so let's talk about signal chain. Let me show you the signal chain of my pedal board quick. Okay, so from Mr. Marshall MG, that's a lot of glare. So from the Marshall MG, we're going into the Zoom G2 here. So out of the Zoom G2.1U, we're going into the Looper, which is the DL4. which is set to the loop mode. Okay, out of that, we're going into the Marshall Governor, which I don't know if you'll be able to see. I have volume quite, I don't know if that blurs. I think it's blurred. But I have a volume about 10 o'clock at this point in time, and that means I can solo over this loop. Okay, so, because it's not drowning that out, this pedal isn't louder than the loop. Okay, so out of that, we come into the Tone City Golden Plexi. Out of that, we go into the Ibanez Wah. Out of the Ibanez Wah, we go into the DS2, and out of the DS2, we go to the guitar. So, just to recap, Marshall, Zoom, Looper, which, you know, we'll call it the Looper because that's all it's doing at this point in time. Marshall Governor 2 Plus, Golden Plexi, Ibanez Wah, DS2 to the guitar. And like I say, because the DS2 is on this side of the Governor, this becomes the master volume. So if I crank this, the DS2 will go to that volume. But if I lower the volume on the Governor, the DS2 will go to the volume of this pedal, and that means that I can then use this pedal and this pedal over the top of this loop without it getting any louder and drowning anything out. I hope this makes sense. I'm terrified it doesn't. Okay, and like I say, if I was to solo over that in clean, I would just turn the Golden Plexi on and just leave the Golden Plexi on, and I wouldn't mess around with anything else. But because I wanted to do, and because I enjoy doing those really long, singy, sustained kind of notes, and go a bit crazy and lose my mind a bit, I like to add more gain. So hence the Governor and the DS2, and like hopefully you'll be able to see, like, the DS2 is just maxed out on the turbo mode, and also I've got the gain maxed out on the Governor. Okay, so I don't know if this effects chain, the way I've got this set up, is anything to do with the fact that I can loop go through the front end using this. I'm not sure if that's got anything to do with it, but I wanted to show you it just in case you might be able to, like, you know, go away and try it. But like I say, it's really important, I think, when looping, to use something like an overdrive pedal, just kind of like kick up the volume of the loop, and then turn down your lead pedal. Okay, so just to recap, from the amp, Zoom, Looper, Governor, Golden Plexi, wah wah pedal, DS2, guitar. Okay, so that's basically all I do. So let me show you this in kind of like in a practical sense now. Let me put the guitar on and show you what I mean, what I do basically. Okay, so let me talk about some of these things in a practical sense. So yeah, hopefully it'll make more sense. I really hope this video is making sense. I'm terrified it's not, and I'm wasting all your time. So hopefully this is making sense. I'm terrified. Okay, so if I create a loop now, like I say, if I don't use the Golden Plexi, and I think this is where I fell down. I think this is where some people do fall down with the looping. Is if I create a loop now with this clean, this is just the MG. So now if I create a loop with that sound. Okay, so I've got my really clean loop. I'm like, oh, I'm happy with that. Now I want to solo over it. I won't be able to use the Governor. I might be able to use the Golden Plexi because it's very clean. Okay, that's not an issue because that's still clean. So that's not drowning out the loop. That's not doing anything. The problem arises when you want to put distortion or anything bigger over the top of that. So for instance, if I put on the Golden Plexi again and go to the DS2, the loop will now vanish. Or not. Oh, I know why, sorry. The reason the loop didn't vanish then, I'm getting mixed up here, this is why. The reason the loop is still there when I do this is because the volume of the DS2 is now being attenuated by the Golden Plexi. But if I were to turn the Golden Plexi off and go to the Governor, the volume is now set to where I normally have it at 3 o'clock. The loop will now almost vanish because this is now louder than this. So I can't even hear. I can't hear the loop. I can't play in time with it because it's just dominant over the top of it. Okay, so that's where turning this volume down on the governor comes in. So if I now turn the volume down to about 9 o'clock, it should now sit quite nicely in the loop. But as you can hear, I have lost gain. There's not as much gain there. And it's a bit of a thinner sound. Okay, so it's no longer drowning out the loop. But again, if I put that back up to normal volume, so if I put the governor back up to 3 o'clock again, as soon as I start playing over that loop, it'll just drown it out. But turning it down to about 9, all of a sudden it starts to behave. So then I can play over that to my heart's content without worrying about the loop disappearing and you know, vanishing and not being able to hear it and play in time. So, and another thing I can now do, because the governor is now the master volume of my solo tone, I can now stick on this DS2 for extra singy sustain. So going back to that really clean loop, click on the governor, I can now put the DS2 over the top, I get infinite sustain without it destroying the loop. Take the governor away and you have problems. And that's it. As soon as that's gone, or that's not there anymore to control this, your loop disappears again. So it's all about volumes. You've really got to watch your volumes. And again, if you're going to loop over something like that, but it's really, really clean, turn the lead pedal, master, down. Turn it all the way down. And then anything that comes after that will be attenuated by that master pedal, if you will. So anything I do after this will be attenuated by the governor. So if I even go onto the Ibanez wah, I kick both on. So there you go. That's basically kind of like, if I was to like loop really clean, that's basically what's going on there. So I'm using basically this Marshall pedal as a master volume. It's like an attenuator almost, really, just to kind of like keep the volume down. So that's the kind of main thing. Always lower the volume. Okay, now, next thing. Loop using an overdrive, so things are a bit louder. So we go from this kind of sound to this. So turn my amp down a bit so I'm not peaking the camera. So a bit more distorted, creating the loop again. Now things shouldn't be, when I kick on the governor, I should be able to turn it up. The governor will probably disappear into this loop. So. Not the best looping there, but. So now if I turn off the golden plexi and turn on the governor with the volume where it is, the governor will probably disappear. Okay, so yeah, it's gone. It's there. Because the looper's volume is now louder than my lead tone. So I can actually get away with turning my volume up on the governor, which is great. And because that's louder now, I've got more gain, I've got more body, you know, I've got more volume control with the governor and everything in general. So that's really cool. So yeah, there you go. And then also you're not going to get any kind of like crazy you know, you can't really make the loop disappear unless you use this pedal. Even then, it didn't really disappear. So yeah, there we go. I can't think if there's anything else. It's all really what it really all boils down to is management of your volume, your master volume. Especially when you kind of like, you know, if you're going to play lead over the top of it and you want to use distortion, it all comes down to that volume of that main lead pedal. That's what it comes down to. Like I said, if you're using a really clean loop, always be aware of the volume of your lead pedal, because anything that comes after that, like the DS2 for instance, in this instance, will abide by what that lead pedal is doing. That is your master, basically. And like I say, that's my kind of like effects chain, if you will. I don't know if that's got anything to do with it. Excuse me. But I do know for a fact that this is the way I found it all to work. I don't know why. It was just a lot, many hours of messing around and experimenting. Anyway, I think that's about it. So hopefully there's something in there you can kind of take away. If your loop disappears when you kick on a lead pedal, turn the volume of that pedal down. And failing that, when you're creating loops, use something to boost the clean sound a bit. So, like for instance, my Golden Plexi boosts my clean sound quite substantially. If you go from that to this, so you can hear there's a big volume jump there and a bit of a gain boost, which gives your clean tone more beef, girth, if you will. So it just makes it bigger for when you're doing loops. It's, you know, it just makes it a bit more fat, which means you can get away with more volume on your lead pedals, so to say. Okay, and like I say, and that's another thing as well, like I say, using one pedal as like, you know, the master kind of attenuator, so to say. Okay, so I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. I think. If you do have any more questions, by the way, if I have failed to mention something, which is very possible because I'm a bit stupid, but if I've failed to mention anything that you'd be curious about, please leave a question in the comment section below, and I will reply to you if I know what the answer is. If not, I'll just put comments about I don't understand. I don't know because I'm stupid. Anyway, but yeah, that's how I do looping into a front end and get away with the ability to kind of like have mass gain. You know, that's how I'm able to kind of like do loops like I did at the intro with mass gain and all that kind of thing without drowning out the loop in the front end. And I think also another key thing is to set the amp clean. Not set the amp to kind of like semi-broken up or kind of like fully distorted, because your amp needs to be clean. Basically what you need to do is, the loop is going to work best if it has a very clean signal and then you use pedals over the top of it. So set your amp up super clean and then use pedals to boost that. And then you can solo over the top of it. Okay, so yeah, try that. Set your amp clean. Use your lead pedal as a master volume for when you're soloing over it, and use something like an overdrive pedal or something to boost the clean volume of your loop, so you've got a bit more oomph in the volume of your loop. Okay, this video is difficult. This is really tough, but and I say, I don't know if this will work for everybody, but this is the way I do it, so to say. So what I normally do, like I say, is I create loops like this. I put the Golden Plexi on, figure out a chord progression. Get a loop of that going, and then what I'll do is I'll go for my governor, turn the Golden Plexi off, get that loop going again. Get away with a bit more volume. Check everything works. Which it does, and happy days. And then I can solo over that to my heart's content using all my pedals and using whatever I want without worrying about the loop disappearing because that's set. And I invariably turn the loop volume all the way up on a looper in the front end like this anyway. That doesn't work for every looper, but for the Line 6 delay modeler, for some reason I always have the volume, the mix dial, all the way up. The Ditto looper, when I'm using that in the effects loop, the loop level is normally about 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock, or in very rare occasions 1 o'clock, but we're not really talking about it right now. That's an effects loop. If you can use a looper in an effects loop, do so. It's better than running it into the front end. It's one of the perks of having an effects loop. Is if you run a looper into the effects loop, it's just better for it in general. But if you have to run a looper into the front end, this is what I'd recommend to do. This is how I've always done it, and this is how it works for me. So hopefully there's something in this video you'll be able to kind of like, take away and kind of like mess around with and just kind of like play around with, and hopefully it'll work for you and you'll be able to kind of like loop going into the front end of your amplifier. Okay, so yeah, is there anything else I wanted to talk about? I don't think there is. Like I say, if there's any questions, leave a comment in the comment section below with your question, and I'll get back to you. If I've failed to mention something, which is very possible, but I've tried to be as thorough as I can. It might have been a bit boring, a bit long-winded, but I've tried to be as thorough as I can about this, and basically show you how I do it, and signal chain, and explaining like if your loop's disappearing, it's invariably your lead pedal that's the problem, and the volume on that lead pedal needs to come down. And then once you've turned that down, you'll find you've lost gain. So you'll have to add another pedal on the input side of that pedal, so basically the right side of that pedal, to boost that gain back up if you want to get those big singy, sustainy kind of lead kind of things. Okay, so yeah, there we go, everybody. I hope this video has been informative. I hope it's been helpful. I hope it will help some of you out there, kind of like for looping into the front end. And yeah, how about an outro jam? Thank you very, very, very much for watching. I quite like that. I think we'll have that as an outro jam. It's going to add some stuff to it. Let me add some stuff to it while we're here. So, I'm going to add some nice kind of volume swells over the top. Was that the chord progression? I'm pretty sure that was chord progression. Let me just check. So yeah, that's it. Now I can solo back to my heart's content. Which I will do in a minute after I've turned the delay down as well. Okay, so I hope this has been an informative video, but I hope there's something you can kind of take away from that about looping into the front end. And I will see you again on Wednesday for Q&A. Have a great morning, afternoon, and good evening. I really hope this video made some sort of sense. I do have a tendency to ramble and be really long-winded about stuff, but I like to be thorough as best as I can be. And yeah, I will see you again. Have a great morning, afternoon, good evening. Goodbye now. Thank you very much for watching. Check out my feet. Look at my foot movement. That's cool, isn't it? No, it's not, Dave. You're an idiot. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye now. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.